Greetings and welcome to Tribal Tea Talk. We are happy to be with you guys once again. This sad topic of food crisis that we are dealing with now. It's most unfortunate, and one of the first victims, one of the first nations to fall victim to this food crisis issue and economic crisis is Sri Lanka, island nation. Uh, it is in the Far East for those who don't know. So we are going to touch into a CNN article whose heading reads Sri Lanka's economy has completely collapsed, Prime Minister says. My dear, please.
Sri Lanka's economy has completely collapsed, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said Wednesday, as the crisis-hit nation faces an increasingly dire situation that has left millions struggling with fuel, electricity, and food shortages. Our economy has faced a complete collapse, Wickremesinghe told Sri Lanka's parliament, adding the government was seeking help from its global partners and the International Monetary Fund to stabilize the economy. But Wickremesinghe warned the island nation of 22 million was facing a far more serious situation beyond the shortages. Sri Lanka is in the midst of its worst financial crisis in 7 decades after its foreign exchange reserves plummeted to record lows, with dollars running out to pay for essential imports including food, medicine, and fuel. In recent weeks, the government has taken drastic measures to cope with the crisis, including implementing a 4-day work week for public sector workers to allow them time to grow their own crops. However, the measures are doing little to ease the struggles faced by many in the country.
Now, people, it's crazy because governments know in a time of the Sri Lankan government know in this time of dire crisis where people's lives are at danger, they have now shortened the work week for the people to plant food. Now, if this was a solution that was something that could have been explored, why wait until a time of crisis? Now, people, this is what we're trying to say here. It is very important, and we will keep on drilling this message. It is very important that we get serious with food production. Please continue the article.
In several major cities, including the commercial capital Colombo, hundreds continue to queue for hours to buy fuel, sometimes clashing with police and the military as they wait. Trains have reduced in frequency, forcing travelers to squeeze into compartments and even sit precariously on top of them as they commute to work. Patients are unable to travel to hospitals due to the fuel shortage, and food prices are soaring. Rice, a staple in the South Asian nation, have disappeared from shelves in many shops and supermarkets. This week alone, 11 people have died waiting in queues for fuel, according to police officials.
Well, people, we can see clearly that this economic situation, and it's not Sri Lanka alone. After the lockdowns caused by COVID-19, you will find that nothing was happening in countries for 2 to 3 years. So now they're saying that not even rice, which is a staple for Asian people, totally important, they base many dishes off of it. It's unavailable. Rice is unavailable. So what does that mean? That means that there's no production going on. So people, we have a serious issue here. Let's go further.
Wickremesinghe, who took office days after violent protests forced his predecessor Mahinda Rajapaksa to resign, appeared to place the blame on the previous government for the country's situation in his comments Wednesday. It is no easy task to revive a country with a completely collapsed economy, especially one that is dangerously low on foreign reserves, he said. If steps had at least been taken to slow down the collapse of the economy at the beginning, we would not be facing this difficult situation today. End quote. Last week, Sri Lanka's power and energy minister told the reporters the country had only enough fuel stock to last 5 days. Sri Lanka has mainly been relying on neighboring India to remain afloat. It has received $4 million in credit lines, but with Remising said that too might not be enough. We have requested more loan assistance from our Indian counterparts, but even India will not be able to continuously support us in this manner, he said. The next step, he said, was to strike a deal with the IMF. This is our only option. We must take this path. Our aim is to hold discussions with the IMF and arrive at an agreement to obtain an additional credit facility, Wickremesinghe Singh said. He added Sri Lanka is currently in discussion with the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and the United States to secure interim short-term loans until it received IMF support.
My question to this at this point in the article is, will these loans kickstart food production? And my question is, usually how the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, does it is that when they give you money, they stipulate what that money can do. So their people will come in, assess your situation, and give you what they believe is the best fit economic model to use their money. And I must tell you from experience, because even in Jamaica here, we've been through many IMF measures. Measures is what they call them. And they do not encourage investment in agriculture. They tell you that, okay, you need to go and buy the fuel, you need to buy this and buy that, and they never ever advise you to fortify agriculture. So they are already a heavily indebted nation, and it is debts that is causing this that are causing this total collapse of their economy, and no food is gone from the shelves. So my question is, will more money bringing more debt help Sri Lanka in this situation? We have to see. Let's get back to the article.
A team of representatives from the US Department of the Treasury will arrive in Sri Lanka next week, he said. In addition to this, Sri Lanka will seek assistance from China and Japan, two of its main lending countries, Wickremesinghe added. If we receive the IMF seal of approval, the world will once again trust us, he said. It will help us to secure loan assistance, as well as low interest loans from other countries in the world.
So, in order that article is done, okay. In order to get the IMF seal of approval, it is very important that you undergo something that is called debt restructuring. No, I'm not a pro at this. I didn't really go too deep with the economic side of international relations. Wasn't really my passion. But what I can say is their debt restructuring program, literally, as I said before, outlines what you can and cannot do with their money. Now, you're in debt already, you take more debt, and you expect that after taking on more debt, you're going to have more trust for more people to lend you more money to take you out of debt. Guys, this is the major issue that we're having as tribal people. But we are going to touch on, what's this, AP News, an explainer as to why Sri Lanka's economy collapsed and what's next. Let's see if we can dig into some more information.
So, Sri Lanka's Prime Minister says the island nation's debt laden economy has collapsed as it runs out of money to pay for food and fuel. Short of cash to pay for imports of such necessities and already defaulting on its debt, it is seeking help from neighboring India and China and from the International Monetary Fund. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who took office in May, was emphasizing the monumental task he faces in turning around an economy he said is heading for a rock bottom. Sri Lankans are skipping meals as they endure shortages, lining up for hours to try to buy scarce fuel. It's a harsh reality for a country whose economy had been growing quickly with a growing and comfortable middle class until the latest crisis deepened. How serious is this crisis? The government owes $51 billion and is unable to make interest payments on its loans, let alone put a dent in the amount borrowed. Tourism, an important engine of economic growth, has sputtered because of the pandemic and concerns about safety after terror attacks in 2009, and its currency has collapsed by 80%, making imports more expensive and worsening inflation that is already out of control, with food costs rising 57% according to official data.
Okay, so finally, an article with some sort of honesty. So they've been skirting around the issue of the cost of food. And even in this AP article, they're not saying outright that there is a global food price issue. Now, in economics, it's pretty simple. If you don't have supply to furnish a demand of whatever good commodity, whatever it is that you're selling, you the prices are going to increase. That's what the rule of scarcity tells us. That if something is scarce, people will want to expend or will have to expend more money, more resources in order to get it. If food prices have risen 57%, it means pretty much that food is unavailable. That's the only way it could be that expensive. It's logic. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So, being that this is tribal tea talk, we're going to keep on drilling it into your heads, please, even if it is a plastic bottle. Get some dirt in it and get some seeds in it, because with what is coming, it's not going to be pretty. And if it is that the prime minister of an entire country can be cutting down the work week to 4 days to accommodate people to plant their own food, it means that we need to probably take it on full time, guys.
The result is a country hurtling towards bankruptcy, with hardly any money to import gasoline, milk, cooking gas, and toilet paper. Political corruption is also a problem. Not only did it play a role in the country squandering its wealth, but it also complicates any financial rescue for Sri Lanka. Anit Mukherjee, a policy fellow and economist at the Center for Global Development in Washington, said any assistance from the IMF or World Bank should come with strict conditions to make sure the aid isn't mismanaged. Still, Mukherjee noted that Sri Lanka sits in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, and so letting a country of such strategic significance collapse is not an option. But how is it affecting real people? Tropical Sri Lanka normally is not lacking for food, but people are going hungry. The UN World Food Programme says nearly 9 of 10 families are skipping meals or otherwise skimping to stretch out their food, while 3 million are receiving emergency humanitarian aid. Doctors have resorted to social media to try to get critical supplies of equipment and medicine. Growing numbers of Sri Lankans are seeking passports to go overseas in search of work.
Let's stick a pin right there and scroll up. Okay, so they said, how is it affecting real people? Tropical Sri Lanka normally is not lacking for food, but people are going hungry. And they go on to say that 9 out of 10 people are skipping meals, 10 families are skipping meals, but they are not saying why tropical Sri Lanka is lacking for food and why people are going hungry. It can't just be about money. Because if they're saying that Sri Lanka is tropical, it means that there's an all year round growing season. What is the problem? Will we get the truth?
Government workers have been given an extra day off for 3 months to allow them time to grow their own food. In short, people are suffering and desperate for things to improve. Why is the economy in such dire straits? Economists say the crisis stems from domestic factors such as years of mismanagement and corruption. Much of the public's ire has focused on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his brother former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The latter resigned after 3 weeks of anti-government protests that eventually turned violent. Conditions have been deteriorating for the past several years. In 2019, Easter suicide bombings at churches and hotels killed more than 260 people. That devastated tourism. a key source of foreign exchange. The government needed to boost its revenues as foreign debt for big infrastructure projects soared. But instead, Rajapaksa pushed through the largest tax cuts in Sri Lankan history. The tax cuts were recently reversed. Creditors downgraded Sri Lanka's ratings, blocking it from borrowing more money as its foreign reserves sank. Then, tourism flatlined again during the pandemic. In April 2021, Rajapaksa suddenly banned imports of chemical fertilizers. The push for organic farming caught farmers by surprise and decimated staple rice crops, driving prices higher.
Okay, so we are now getting to the root of the matter. So it's all about mismanagement. In their neighboring India, and we will touch on this. I cannot remember the name of the province in India, but we will touch on this in a separate video. What they did, they had I believe it was about 11 years of preparation to move away from inorganic food production to organic food production. So what they're basically saying here is this president jumped up and said, "Oh, we're going to turn organic right now," and he banned imports and all of those things. But my question is, in our previous video, we established that there is a world phosphorus shortage. Is it that the president, recognizing that there was a phosphorus shortage, but not knowing how to break it to his people, decided that, hey, let me not say anything to anybody and let's just ban everything and just try? You know, valiant, but, and maybe his heart was in the right place, but mismanagement is a dangerous thing.
To save on foreign exchange, imports of other items deemed to be luxuries also were banned. Meanwhile, the Ukraine war has pushed prices of food and oil higher. Inflation was near 40% and food prices were up nearly 60% in May. Why did the Prime Minister say the economy has collapsed? Such a stark declaration might undermine any confidence in the state of the economy, and it did not reflect any specific new development. Week Remising appeared to be underscoring the challenge his government faces in turning things around as it seeks help from the IMF and confronts criticism over the lack of improvement since he took office weeks ago. He's also fending off criticism from within the country. His comment might be intended to try to buy more time and support as he tries to get the economy back on track. The finance ministry says Sri Lanka has only $25 million in usable foreign reserves. That has left it without the wherewithal to pay for imports, let alone repay billions in debt. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee has weakened in value to about 360 to a dollar. That makes costs of imports even more prohibitive. Sri Lanka has suspended repayments of about 7 billion in foreign loans due this year out of 25 billion to be repaid by 2026. What is the government doing about it? Wickremi Singh has ample experience. This latest is his sixth term as Prime Minister. So far, Sri Lanka has been muddling through, mainly supported by 4 billion in credit lines from neighboring India. An Indian delegation was in the capital Colombo on Thursday for talks on more assistance, but Wickremi Singh warned against expecting India to keep Sri Lanka afloat for long. Sri Lanka pins last hopes on IMF, said Thursday's headline in the Colombo Times newspaper. The government is in negotiations with the IMF on a bailout plan, and Wickremi Singh said Wednesday he expects to have a preliminary agreement with the IMF by late July. The government also is seeking more help from China. Other governments like the US, Japan, and Australia have provided a few $100 million in extra support. Earlier this month, the United Nations began a worldwide public appeal for assistance. So far, projected funding barely scratches the surface of the $6 billion the country needs to stay afloat over the next 6 months. To counter Sri Lanka's fuel shortage, Wickremi Singh told the Associated Press in a recent interview that he would consider buying more steeply discounted oil from Russia to help tide the country through its crisis.
And what a crisis it is. What a crisis it is. Guys, I really don't know. I am at a loss for words, and it is one of the most unfortunate things I've seen in a long time. But, you know, we have been told to idolize our leaders. We have been taught to think that the people in government know it all and have it down pat. We're now realizing that they really may not know what they're doing all the time. And what is most unfortunate about that is that the first people, the people of the earth, the indigenous people, the tribal people who they love to scorn, we have a lot of experience where this is concerned. In a lot of cases, thousands of years of experience, and we have much to offer. So please, we're asking you to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned to Tribal Tea Talk. Because at Tribal Tea Talk, we will be striving to ensure that we, as tribal people, as the first people of the earth, do our part to protect and help our brothers and sisters worldwide to not starve to death.
Thank you for listening, guys. Just a bit of food for thought. What if your country had to go organic overnight? Is your country ready? Just something, food for thought, something to educate, stimulate, and motivate. So don't forget, like, comment, share, and subscribe. So drop your thoughts in the comment section below. What if your country had to go organic overnight? Thank you.